So today I have Nicola Mills and Joe Vadillo, so Joe, our occasional host, or co-host, to come and talk about a really exciting business. And the business is called Property Circles. And it's so basically I would call it facilitated JVs in property. Well, that's my understanding of it, but my understanding is quite blurred. And so I've asked Nicola and Joe to come on to really get into the nitty-gritty of what it's about and what it makes available, particularly for women. And so welcome to you both. And I'm just wondering if we could kick off maybe with you, Nicola, because you are this is your baby initially and your idea. And so just if you'd like to, I guess, tell us a bit about it and what your role is in the organisation at the moment.
Yeah, so let me go back to where it all began, I suppose, and how my Property Circles started. And it really started many years ago when I did a plan on where I wanted to retire in my life and how much money I needed to retire. And it's a great thing to do, and you kind of work backwards from there. And I figured that I needed, X amount of money to pay for and you got a dream, right? You put the dream goals in here. My international flights, business class, of course, could even go for first. I wanted to do my hair and my nails, and I wanted this and these all, and, domestic travel and these holidays. And I put all that in, and I put a number down the bottom, and I nearly fell off my chair because it was a lot of money without working. So then I kind of worked backwards from there. I thought, well, how can I get this much money every year without working? And how do I do that? And I kind of looked at all these, and I'm in business and I have different businesses, but the safest, surest way there over time was property. Anyway, so I worked back how many properties I would need to have to earn all this cash I needed. And it came to that figure. I worked it back, and I basically needed to buy a property a year at that point, or cut down on international flights. So again, stick with your big goals. So anyway, it came back to the point I was, and I thought, well, I need to buy a property this year. I mean, I need to get started, but I didn't have the big deposit at that point. So again, how do I get around that? So I called up a couple of friends and said, hey, do you want to come and start buying some properties with me, and we can buy properties over 10 years and buy a property a year, and we'll share the cost of doing that, and we'll have X number of properties, and then at the end we can sell them out and keep all the money. Now, my Property Circles, we don't do that for 10 years now. We kind of got it 5 years and decide to go on. But anyway, that was my 10-year plan. So we did. So we worked out how much money we needed, and how much have you got, and how much have you got, and how much have you got? And we all put it in a pool and went to the bank and said, look at our money, and can we have a loan? And this is the property we want to buy. And the bank said yes. The key to it, though, I went to a really good lawyer at the time who was almost half an accountant, and she worked out a really good structure for us and my friends. And mainly it was to protect us from each other. And I had actually been through a divorce at that point. So she was almost protecting them from me, I suppose, through another one. But she set it up so that other people's problems didn't become my problems, or their problems didn't become, my problems. So away we went. So we bought our first property. We call it the shack. It wasn't worth a lot. And then we just steadily bought a property every year after that. So that's basically how it works. You kind of come together, you share your money. It can be different amounts of money, doesn't matter. Some people have more than others at the time. And we started a unit trust, and we all got our shares in that. And yeah, so that first circle I started, and we're about to buy our 6th property in that. But I've since started other Property Circles with other groups and other friends. So I'm well on the way to meeting those goals now that I set all those years ago.
That's awesome. Beautiful. And so your role in the company now is of founder and...
Yeah, so I just really go out now and talk to people about it. And I just use my own experience, and my experience is different. I use my part of that accountant I went and spoke to they put me into a self-managed super fund. So I use the funds from my super. And that was even better because that didn't come out of my day-to-day savings. It was money that I could access, which I wouldn't normally have. So that's worked really, really well for me. So I talk to people about that. You need to go and talk to your accountant. Obviously, I'm not a financial advisor. I only talk about my own personal situation. And then we've had other people who've put cash in. And the key difference has been, and you know, I've got a couple of friends in there who put cash, and they're laughing at me now because when we come out, you know, they're going to get this nice big fat check, and they'll go on a holiday. Well, when we get out of COVID, they can go on a holiday. They can go on a holiday and do all this stuff, and I have to put my big fat check back into my super fund. But that's okay. I mean, the whole idea, it was a long-term plan anyway, so that works, and it kind of gives me forced savings and makes sure I don't spend it before I should. So everyone has different ways of dealing with it. So now I just really talk to people about it and how it worked for me, and how they can do it too. And I have another passion that I'm working on, which is bricks for chicks, which I can talk to now, or we can come back to it.
I've definitely got that on the agenda, but we might just swing over to Jo and get her where she's at first, and then we'll start getting into, you know, some of the workings of it, because I think people are going to be really interested, because one of the most common questions that I get is around joint ventures. And I really love that you have, I guess, smoothed out the way in some ways for people to do it. And I do want to ask you a bit more about that as once we get into it. But next to you, Jo, so how did you get involved with My Property Circles, and what's your role?
I actually happened across a call out for a board as a board to be a board member of My Property Circles. And it was My Property Circles Bricks for Chicks program, which I know Nicola will disclose a little bit more about how that operates. And it just like spoke to me because, like yourself, people are very, very interested in getting to joint venture scenarios. I know a number of people who've come up with these fantastic property deals and opportunities, but not been in the position to complete that sale. So it's such an amazing program for people to go forward in their property plans and build their portfolio and see out their dreams. So they've got a very good percentage of something, maybe not 100%, but geez, it's better than having 100% of nothing. So I was really interested. I met with Nicola, and I recognized that we're so congruent in our views and our motivation behind this. To see to it that we're not only just helping people grow their net worth and doing it in this format, but we're also being able to have that, I guess, a bit of a legacy there to be able to assist people in that Bricks for Chicks program as well. So as a board member, and also because obviously as a director of Property Women, I'm involved with so many women who are completely passionate about property, but a lot of them do come from a situation where their income has been subsidised, it's obviously they're part-time employees, they've been looking after elderly parents, or they've been the primary caregiver in the home, and therefore their income isn't what it needs to be for them to start to build their portfolio.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so, so you're actually on the board?
I am very proud to be too, because it really is something I see as a beautiful synergy with what I do in terms of assisting people with finding really good, sound investment properties, but also being able to see people grow their personal wealth through property as well.
Okay, and so your role also is sourcing properties?
That's right, correct. So yeah, where it's needed in a property circle to have that expert on the team. Yeah. My company will be the people that will stand up and go and make sure that the property ticks all the boxes when it comes to a really good sound investment and provide good yield, but also strong growth as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I can't wait until we add renovating to the mix.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that. Renovation circles, here they come.
Yeah. So Nicola, let's say that I want to come into My Property Circles. I've got a little bit of money and I'm wanting to invest it, but I don't quite have enough money to put together. Let's say I've got 20,000. Is that enough?
Yeah, no, 20,000 is definitely enough. And I'll go back to, you know, my original circle. Everyone had different amounts that they could put in. Some people can put in 40, 50, 60,000, and some people can only put in 10 or 20,000. So you've just got to get to, I mean, currently, you know, for a startup circle, I'm not talking about a renovation circle, but for a startup circle, we have $160,000 there. That pays for your deposit, your first year of working cap in a circle, and just making sure that the circle's nice and safe. And then you just kind of split that up amongst everybody. If you don't, and I will talk about the Bricks for Chicks program here. If you only have like $5,000, the Bricks for Chicks program will do dollar for dollar match funding. So if you can only put down $5,000, we'll put down another $5,000, and we do that up to 10, or sorry, we double that. So if you can put down $10,000, we'll put in another 10, and that gives you $20,000 to go into a property circle. That gives you a good chunk of the circle. So, and then you don't have to pay that $10,000 back until the properties are sold in 5 years. So there is interest on it. It's very low interest. The Bricks for Chicks program is all about helping women. And I'd like to go back and give a little bit of background on that, if that's okay. Yeah. So that really came about. I was a few years into my original property circle, and I had some friends over the years saying, "Oh, can we come into your circle? It looks like it's going great." I said, "No, we're kind of happy, but I'll start another one with you." And I'm quite interested in lifestyle circles or renovation circles. I haven't really had an expert in the renovation circles yet until Bernadette, you came along. So I'm very excited about us kicking off those renovation circles. But I had a friend whose husband died, unexpectedly, left her with 2 girls under 10. So her life changed dramatically, and she had I think the girls were 9 and 7 at the time. So I was working with her a lot around, well, first the grief, and then secondly, I said to her one day, "Hey," we were talking about money and wealth, and I said, "Why don't you come into a property circle with me, and we can start building some wealth up for either you or for the girls, so that at the end of 5 years, 10 years, you've got a deposit for them each, or, you know, you're well on the way to feeling safer about your situation." Because at that time, the banks won't lend to her. You know, she's working part-time, she's got 2 dependents. The banks won't lend to her. And I said, "Oh, you could use a self-managed super fund." And anyway, she came back to me a couple of days later and said, "Nick, I can't do it because, well, one, I don't have a self-managed super fund, and I don't have enough money in it because I haven't worked enough. And secondly, I don't have the savings, and, you know, and I'm worried about, you know, where I'm going." So I then went away for a couple of days and thought, well, how can I help her? What can I do here? And in that time that I was thinking about that, I really had a good look around at some of my other friends, and there are so many women in that situation who, I call it the 4 Ds: death, divorce, domestic violence, and see, what's the 4th one? Drinking? No.
We're not drinking. On the back of COVID, we've got 5 Ds now.
Disease. So that it's just life. Life has just given them a curveball, and it's often through no fault of their own, and they're stuck. And if they're stuck, their kids are stuck. So how do you get out of the situation? So that's where Bricks for Chicks was born, where we do this dollar for dollar match funding. I called Holly back and said, you know, "What can you do?" She said, "I can do about $4,000 or $5,000 that I would feel comfortable with." And I said, "Okay, well, we'll give you the other $4,000 or $5,000. You're in." And now she's on her way, and she owns now a piece of something, and she knows now that her wealth is starting to build, and she's not stuck. So I'm really, really proud of the Bricks for Chicks program. It's something we really want to develop and help more women with. And it's for any woman. It's not just, you don't, in your mind, think, "Oh, it's only for women who don't have money." That's not true. It's actually for any woman who's just in a situation in her life right now, and she just needs help. And there's probably a lot more women who've maybe just been made redundant or lost jobs at this current point, and we can help them. It doesn't mean that you should stop, you know, building that wealth, or even it's little small steps, it's something. So that's the Bricks for Chicks program.
That's great. Really great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing program because it also gives women that opportunity to build their confidence up after a situation like they've been made redundant, or that they find themselves, you know, all of a sudden single in their late 40s and they've got 2 dependents still at home, and it just gets them, I don't know, back to feeling good about themselves. And a mother with a strong self-esteem, obviously that, you know, the benefits of that is huge, especially in the home. So
One
of the other women that we're helping, she went to a private school, she came from a good family, she's got a really good job, you know, earning a good wage, but her dad got cancer and now she supports the family. So
Wow.
it can come from anywhere, right? So she's entered the Bricks for Chicks program, she's getting help, and when things, you know, improve in her life, she might then put extra money in or do different things, but at least she can keep moving and working towards her goals. Yeah, so we're really proud of it, aren't we, Jo?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it just sounds perfect, like really. And I think the thing that I think that's great about property is that it's an interest and it's something to sort of monitor, and it's so like I know, and I'm sure you do too, a lot of women with an addiction to the real estate pages. But often don't actually own any property themselves. So actually being able to get in there on the court is amazing. So well done. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And look, and I thought I would, you know, go in with my friends and we'd build these properties together, and then we would sell out, and then I'd use that money. But I'm actually going into more circles with more friends and doing it that way, because the more you do it with others, the more you can buy, you kind of multiplies and compounds and just gets bigger. So I'm addicted myself.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, so we've done quite a few joint ventures, and basically how we've set them up is that we have had one party get the loan and the other party or parties put in the cash, and we've separated them with legal structures. But so with yours, when you're doing it as a unit trust, how do you deal with the getting of the finance?
Yeah, look, you can do it still a number of ways. I think the key thing that you said there, Bernadette, is the legal structure. So the core of everything is, there's a couple of things we do with My Property Circles. One, make sure you're protected from each other. I mean, you're going in it together, but making sure that you're protected from each other, and transparency, which is everybody can see what's happening on the financials and everything we're doing. And that's why we're building a platform. It's not up yet, but everyone will be able to go on, see their properties online, what's happening online, where the finances are. So transparency is really important. But the key to it is those very words, legal structure. So, and look, finance has been, the last 12 months, raw banking commissions, mortgage brokers are being put under pressure. There's so many regulations, and banks are jumping around and changing policies. And now they've had a bit of a scare with what's happening with the COVID-19. So we just got to move with them and what they need. But we always make sure there's this really strong legal structure in place.
And so when we set up joint ventures, the person who is responsible for the loan, whose details go on the balance sheet, that is their contribution to the joint venture. I gather that yours is different. Do they still put?
No, we can do the same. So you can come on to into a property circle as a director, and we actually pay directors per annum to be a director, because you are taking more risk.
Yeah.
It is your name. So you get paid. So in our original property circle, I think the current directors, they only get about $1,000 per annum. At the moment, we're looking to pay our directors currently $2,500 to $5,000 per annum. They get that in units, so they get extra part. But if you're willing to step up and be a director, look, it's fairly low risk. It's in property. We don't do any mortgages that are above that 80-20 leverage, so it's always 20% deposit. We're not taking any risks with 100% loans or anything like that. So the key to us is keeping it safe for you and keeping it safe for others. So a minimum 20% deposit. You go on as a director. The risk is low, but you should still get something for putting your name forward. So, you know, we pay between $2,500 to $5,000 per annum for a director to step up.
Well, that's great. I'm asking these questions specifically because I've got a group that are warming up to, putting a circle together. And that's quite a common scenario where you'll have someone who's got a great income, but, you know, through no fault of their own, for some reason, doesn't have the available cash to contribute, but they can get a decent loan. And then on the other hand, we've got people that have got quite a decent amount of cash, but aren't working enough to have that serviceability to be able to get the loan.
Yeah, that's right. And that's, again, working together to find who's got what and how you kind of come together. And we had one of my friends, after we bought that shack, she actually lost her job and she couldn't put any money in for the next 2 or 3 properties. And so she kind of sat there, her percentage of the circle came down, but she came along the journey. And then in the last couple of years, her life has changed. She's getting really good income and she's poured a bit more back in and she's building that back up again. So the key to is also flexibility. I mean, in the property circles, there's kind of an expectation that you will put money in each year to buy the next property, but it's not an obligation. No one's there to make you do it or force you. And if everybody can't put money in that year, that's okay. You just don't buy a property that year.
Yeah.
You know, no stress. Just don't buy a property that year. No one's gone backwards. You've still got the property you bought the year before. That's still, you know, doing well for you. So it's you go in with an expectation, but it's okay if it doesn't work out. It's okay.
Beautiful. And yes, the other thing that I have tried to, have sort of covered off pretty well is all those things, the death, the divorce, because if that does happen, but I'm guessing the unit trust takes care of that. Is that how you?
Yeah. So what people used to do is all put their names on the mortgage or on the property. And then if someone went through, let's say, a divorce, then their partner could attack that property and put a caveat on or do whatever, be a bit silly. But if it's in a unit trust, the property can't be trusted. The property is owned by the unit trust. They could put a caveat on your units, and when I say units, I mean shares. Don't get confused with apartments. They can put a caveat on your shares, but that's okay. The properties are safe. You don't have to sell the properties. Nothing's been done. Those properties stay nice and safe, and then they can battle it out about those shares, right? And that's fine. They can battle away about those, but you're not having anything done to those properties, so the properties keep getting their income, getting their rent, paying their bills, and there's nothing hanging over the head. The banks don't get scared because someone hasn't come and put a caveat over the security. You know, the banks have the security, and they battle it out in those shares. And then it's the person who's in there can either sell their shares to the other people in the circle, get the cash out and give it to their partner, or they can sell it to someone else, or whatever it might be. So that structure has really stood the test of time. The things that we've changed where we have made mistakes, and that's why Joe is sitting here today, is that we didn't have a property buyer. And so 4 of our properties in that original circle are doing great guns, and we've got one that honestly it barks at me every. And if I'd had Joe on board, we wouldn't have bought that 5th one. But because we have 4 others that are doing so well, it kind of doesn't really matter. They make up the difference. But if I'd bought that one on my own, and it's the only property I had, that would be a massive problem for me. But because I've got it in, you know, it's 1 of 5 and the other 4 are doing well, the risk is much lower and we're much happier. And the other key thing, someone was asking me about this today, is because we're starting my property circles in New Zealand as well. I said, people not paying their rent. And I said, look, if there's a $10,000 problem and there's 5 of you in there, it now becomes a $2,000 problem. And dealing with a $2,000 problem is a lot easier than dealing with a $10,000 problem. So actually through this COVID-19 chaos, it's been good for us. You know, if I was doing it on my own, it would put a lot more pressure on me. Doing it with others, we're all sharing it and it's fine.
Right, yeah. And so Joe, what sort of properties are you buying?
So what we've been working on predominantly is so that startup circle where it's somebody who's got the circle budget's sort of between, say, high fours or early 600s. So they're just good residential properties that have got a strong yield, which is quite important. But also they are going to be delivering growth in the long term as well. And we're sort of sticking to that investor formula where it's in capital cities or major regional hubs where employment and growth is flush, and it just ticks all those right boxes. So we've been really looking at properties that are just going to be nice, sort of set and forget, buy and hold formulas. Where this will work fantastically for renovation circles, because you're assigned a circle manager as well. So if you did have a group of people that were coming together, there's a way that funds could be structured so there's a kitty that you can draw on for that renovation and things like that. So it's a really good way to be getting the circle as a group and make sure that the property that you are buying, what does it look like for your renovation budget? Yeah. What's the budget for the property that we're securing? Perhaps somebody has already got a house in mind, in which case perhaps that, my role is not necessarily needed in that formula, but the formula of the structure being brought together and being managed by my property circles is there for you as well. And what that means is that, in terms of financing and legalities and getting that money in, it kind of removes everybody from being actively involved, because you've got a third party circle manager helping you. And that's one of the most difficult things with joint ventures. It can be that, like Bob hasn't tipped in his 20K yet and he said he's going to do it last Monday. It's one of those scenarios that you're not chasing. We're bringing this together on your behalf. And the business, it's sort of it's removing a bit of the emotion from when you're doing business with others as well.
Absolutely.
I have to say, so one of the things that I find with renovation joint ventures is that it is actually quite an emotional roller coaster. And because so basically we split the jobs, and there'll be someone on site, there'll be someone off site, and the off site person's doing all the off site work, and the on site person is doing all the on site work. And there's this thing, so basically because we try and split the roles fairly evenly, so it works with everyone's personal situation and they're not having to pay someone to do those jobs. And I do find that creates that there's some management to that. So it will be interesting to see how adding renovation to my property circles, how that will evolve. I'm really, quite curious about it. Yeah.
So yeah, we're excited about it. I think, renovation circles, there's a lot of people with a lot of interest. Yeah. Doing it. They just need some guidance along the way. I mean, I know a lot about startup circles, and obviously I know a lot about the structure, so I'm very, very comfortable with that. Yeah. But actually, personally, I've never done a renovation myself.
Yeah, we're going to change that, Nicola.
She's going to get tied in now, Nicola.
The other problem I've had is so basically, because this is my business, if I go into a joint venture, I have all the risk. And my husband is not happy with that. And so he's basically said no more joint ventures, because he, doesn't want to be that exposed. So I quite like the idea. So how do you manage the risk?
Well, again, like I said, we don't over commit on anything. We always make sure there's working capital in the circle, that you get all of that up front. Yeah. We make sure that everyone's very clear on the mandate of the circle. What are we trying to achieve here? How much will that cost? What have we got to do? So everyone goes in very sure from the beginning what we're all doing. I can't talk to the risk of renovations. Again, that's not my expertise, but from a property circle point of view, like I said, we've had people in our circle who have lost their jobs or haven't been able to put money in. We had a tenant who had a mental health issue. We gave them 3 months free rent in that time. We've had, one of those properties that has, maybe broken even, that hasn't done great, but it's been fine because, we had to replace a kitchen once and a deck. It was in the shack. And I'll go back to that $10,000 problem. If there's 5 of you, becomes a $2,000 problem, or if there's 6 of you, it becomes a $1,600 problem. And you can hold on to the property as long as you don't have to emergency sell. And you don't have to emergency sell if there's 4, 5 or 6 of you, because there'll be someone in the circle who'll be able to support it through. The benefit for them is they get more share. So they're willing to do it. I mean, we had something last year and we did a call out to our property circle, and they were throwing the money at us because it meant they got a bigger share of the circle, right? And when you've got 5 or 6 properties, everyone's like, oh, I want a bigger piece of this. So I can't talk to renovations. I mean, you would probably talk more to the risk of renovating something or not, but that's where we like our experts. That's why we do have Jo. She's my property buying expert. We've got the accountants, the legals, mortgage brokers. We put a lot of experts around these circles to make sure they're safe.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the other thing that I wanted to ask you, so let's say I'm in my property circle now. What is my input into let's say it's just it's not a renovation circle, it's just a straight property circle. What's my input on a monthly basis, say?
So we have a circle manager who does most of the work. So they make sure your bookkeeping's done, your accounting's done, that your legal's up to date, that your annual statutory requirements are all done. So the circle manager does most of that work. The circle itself pays, at this point, $1,500 per property per annum for that management of that circle. They pay bills up to, or authorised to pay bills up to $500, or the circle can lift that up as they go. So the circle manager does most of the work. And then your input really is, Jo turns up with 3 or 4 or 5 properties and says, which one do you want? And you vote.
Yeah.
And you agree to do that. Or it might be, if you decide at some point, which we are with one of our properties, we're going to knock it down and put in a development. You all agree on, do we want to spend more money on it? Is this what we want to do, or do you want to hold? So you have at least an annual meeting to discuss where are we going, what are we doing. Our circles, obviously, most property circles run for 5 years. Ours is past that. So we just catch up every year and say, do we want to keep going? Are we happy? Everyone says yes, we keep going. So it's, we try and keep it as easy and as frictionless and seamless as possible. But at the end of the day, it's still your circle and your property, so you make the final decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing you probably like, Bernadette, is that when you make that, just talking about your standard property circle and your contribution, just say it's $25,000, that's it to get you into the property. I mean, within that is all the due costs when it comes to property buying, so your stamp duty, your conveyancing fees, property buyer if it's sourced, the accountant, etc. So all of that's that's all underneath that umbrella. So there's none of that, now we all need to chip in $400 each, or so it's just makes it a little bit cleaner. Yeah. And it's a lot easier when there is a group buying scenario, so that it's done. And the properties we're sourcing have so far been that 5% yield, and then plus up to 7% is one of the circles that we're working on at the moment, which means, we've already got the 20% deposit. We're getting with equities almost even in the deal already. So unless you have got a scenario where, a kitchen does need replacing, and let's be honest, homes need ongoing maintenance requirements and everything. But as Nicola said, that's a fee divided by ownership. And as those circles and the years go on, you're going to see that there is that pot, that kitty there underneath to buffer it up. So you won't be getting that, those sorts of requirements for costs very frequently at all.
It's amazing.
The other thing too with the unit trust is you do get paid dividends each year too. So you get paid out each year a bit of whatever profit you've made in the circle. And our original circle, we have just reinvested that back in to buy more properties. But it does pay out a dividend each year if you've made a profit.
So can you can the circle borrow against the equity in the existing property?
Yes, and so by our third property, we're using the equity in the first 2 properties.
Wow. And even if you've bought it with self-managed super fund money?
Yeah, so our third property cost me $10,000 that year to buy our third property. I was very happy with that. Yeah. But we use an offset account. We do principal and interest. We knock that, a lot of our mortgages, we've knocked 9, 10 years off the mortgage. So we had built up quite a bit of equity. So that third property was a lot easier to buy and a lot cheaper.
Wow, that's great. And I guess where I'm seeing an application for, I guess, renovating and Joe's expertise is maybe getting that equity up earlier, like buying something where you have the potential to, you know, like that project we did in Brisbane last year, to, if you were to renovate that property and sell it off and build a duplex or something.
Yeah.
I think that then, you know, there's definitely an argument for growing it quicker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, if you buy something that over time you can, I think I was talking to you about this, Nicola, was something that's got great value and could do with a renovation prior to selling it, maybe that fifth project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talk about getting 4 properties in 5 years. So by the time you buy that 4th property, you're only going to hang on to it for maybe a year. So you really need to factor in, you've got to get your stamp duty back and all the costs. That's a perfect one for finding something that you can renovate or do something with. So you build the value on it and then you can sell out when you sell out the group. That definitely, that 4th one, you definitely do that with. But look, if you're doing a renovation circle and your mandate is to keep doing that with each property, you might not buy a property every year. You might buy it every couple of years. But the group decides on that up front. What are we trying to achieve? How much do we want out of each property? How much are we all willing to put in kind of each year to make that happen? So, I mean, you can move it, make it flexible for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So are there any questions I should have asked you?
I think we've talked about...
Top of my head, I think we've covered bases really thoroughly, but, you know, I think it's really important if this is of interest to somebody and wondering how it might or certainly suit what their plans are. And whether, you know, that's something that they can reach out to my property circles and, you know, contact our office, set up or schedule in a time. You know, Nicola or another person in the team can actually speak about what we can do, how we can do it, how to move forward. Look, sometimes there's scenarios where they already have the house in mind. You know, sometimes it is, I've just been paid out or I've got my hands on, you know, an inheritance. You know, what can I do to make this work? I want to own 50% of a house. So there's a lot of different formulas. So maybe it's really, you know, I guess imperative that they actually have a conversation about their own personal journey and how to move forward. And that could be by talking to someone directly in my property circles team.
Definitely. So in the show notes, I'll be putting in the details of my property circles. And so is it best if people email or ring you?
Probably register or log in, go to the website or Facebook or maybe email.
Yeah,
we'll see the details.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we put that in the show notes, and I know someone will definitely reach out and then schedule in a one-on-one call just to see, you know, what it looks like, what are the next steps. And, you know, I'm sure we've probably raised some questions here that, you know, that might be, you know, personally aligned, in which case, yeah, we can answer those for them.
I've got one more question.
I've got 2.
Right. So have you ever had a circle go pear-shaped?
No.
Right.
Again, goes back to, we're not interested in doing these 100% loans. It's a minimum 20% deposit. We use experts like Joe, property buyer. We're not doing things that are risky. You're in it for the long term. We're keeping everybody safe and from each other. You're in it together, but we keep you safe within that. So no, it's all been fine.
Yeah, great.
I have 2 questions that people ask me regularly, and probably Joe, which is, can I live in one of the properties? And the answer to that is yes. If you want to become a tenant in one of the properties, then as long as you pay market value rent, of course, and now you're putting rent towards something that you partly own, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the other one is, will it affect my first homeowner's grant? And the answer is no, it won't affect your first homeowner's grant, because the trust is actually it's taking out the mortgage, not you personally. And we've had this checked. So you don't lose your first homeowner's grant. So if you go and decide to buy a property, say you could buy 5 or 6 properties in my property circles, you can still go out and get the first homeowners grant if you decide to go and buy property on your own. It doesn't affect your first homeowners grant.
That's amazing. Great. Well, listen, it's certainly answered a lot of questions that I had racing around in my mind, and I'm sure it's also raised more questions for people listening. So as I said, I'll include your details in the show notes, and I'm sure that you will be contacted by some interested parties, which is so exciting. And also the Bricks for Chicks program too is just, yeah, it's a real credit to you. It's very clear that you are committed to supporting women, you know, in their financial journey. And yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, ladies. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.